Hey y'all, this is Christy from Teadoddles. This will be the first video for a series of stitch tutorials I'm going to do here on my channel. This is for crochet stitches. This one in particular is related to the Cozy Murder Mystery Cow that I have going on over on my blog this year, and I have a Facebook group as well. I will have links down below if you would like to go check that out. There are some stitches in this cow that are more complicated stitches, and I've had requests for video tutorials, so I thought it would be a good kickoff for just a series of stitch tutorials in general. I'm going to do the more complicated ones in the cow first that have been requested, because I do have pictures with instructions in my blog post, but sometimes the video is easier to see what you're doing. I will be doing stitch tutorials for everything from basic stitches on up to advanced stitches eventually, because I know there are beginners on to advanced crocheters that watch my channel. And I know that when I learned to knit, I watched many different videos and looked at many different tutorials for knitting, and it eluded me until I found the one that clicked with me. So everyone learns in a different way, so I think it's great to have a multiple people to choose from when you're learning something new. So I hope y'all will enjoy this. So this stitch we're doing today is called the dropped crisscross stitch. Some of you may be familiar with the crisscross stitch, which you can see in my work down below, where there are two double crochets crisscrossing each other, and there is a chain stitch between it. I will do a tutorial for that eventually, but today I'm doing the dropped crisscross stitch. It works up much the same as a crisscross stitch, but you're dropping to the row below. I have a row of single crochet, a row of crisscross stitches, and then another row of single crochet. So I'm going to work crisscross stitches in this row, but one of the stitches will go around the stitch below in the crisscross stitch below. So that is why it's called a dropped crisscross stitch. So let's just get started with that. On the end of my work, I have a chain 3 and a double crochet, which counts as 2 double crochets. This is what's listed in my pattern, so I'm showing you as it is listed in my pattern, but it can be used, you know, in other patterns, obviously. Now, hopefully there's not too much of a shadow on here. I have my camera hanging from a thing overhead, and it seems it's casting a bit of a shadow, so hopefully maybe I can move over this way. It'll work a little bit better. I think I can see it better there. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to skip 2 stitches. So we're going to skip this stitch and this stitch. So that's 2 single crochets that are below. And we're going to double crochet into this stitch here. Okay, so we're skipping 1, 2, and double crochet here. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook. Now, a tip when you do these crisscross stitches, I know when you do a double crochet, you tend to hold probably your yarn close to your hook so you can keep your stitch together, but when you're doing these that go across several stitches, pull up a little bit more yarn. That'll keep it from being so tight and keep your row from bowing in when you do them all the way across. So just pull up a little bit more at the bottom down here than you normally would, and then we're just going to make our double crochet just like this. And that is a little looser than I like it at the top, but that happens sometimes. It's okay. It usually works out in the end. And we're going to chain 1. Okay, now we're getting ready to make our the drop portion of this double crochet, because in a typical crisscross you would double crochet back in this first stitch. Okay, we're actually going to double crochet around this double crochet in our crisscross below, this one right here. So I'm going to go ahead and yarn over for my double crochet. Then I'm going to insert my hook underneath the top crochet, the top double crochet in the crisscross below. I'm going to do it just like that. And you want to make sure your yarn comes back over this way and it's not stuck up here somewhere. Okay, and then we'll pull it through just like we would the other one. And on this one, you can see how my yarn's gotten all turned around a little bit. I'm just gonna make sure to pull that up a little bit more even than I did with the first one, because it's going to a stitch down below. This just gives you more movement in your work and doesn't make it quite so tight. So then we're just gonna make that double crochet, and it looks something like this when you get done. We went around this double crochet below, so that is what a dropped crisscross stitch is. Okay, now I'm gonna do the next one. So we would skip 1, 2 stitches. We're gonna double crochet in the third stitch, remembering to pull that yarn up a little bit because we're crossing over some other stitches just to keep your work from bowing in as much. Make that double crochet, chain 1. Now we're going to do the dropped double crochet. It goes around this crisscross stitch down below. It's always this top stitch, not the back stitch, but the top stitch down below. So we yarn over, we go underneath it, just going behind it with my hook like that. Yarn over, pull up that yarn just a little bit to keep it from getting so tight. And then we've made our second dropped double crochet. Okay, or a dropped crochet stitch rather. If you've ever done a front post double crochet, this is the same, except you're just going around a crisscross instead of directly below. It gives this nice little wavy bendy pattern on the surface of the crochet. So we would just, I'm going to do this one more time, and then I'm going to show you what it's like when I finish this row. Alright, so we're going to skip 1, 2, double crochet in the third, pull up that yarn a little bit, go, I've got to pull some yarn out here, chain 1, and we're going to go around this stitch here. This is the top stitch of our crisscross stitch below. Yarn over, go behind it just like that, yarn over, pull that yarn up a bit. There we go. See how what a nice textured pattern that's making across there. You'll notice also that in a typical crisscross stitch, you see how you have little spaces. If you did that up here, you'd have spaces. This right here, you don't have the spaces in your top in this drop cross stitch row, but you get this nice raised texture on your work. So I'm going to pause it right here, and I'm going to finish out this row, and then I'll show you what it looks like when you worked a full row, or rather, this width is the size. If you wanted to make a scarf with my pattern, you could do that. The pattern is adjustable, so you can make whatever size lapgan or afghan you want to make, or if you want to make a scarf. So I did the stitch count for the scarf size. So I'm going to pause it right here, and I'm going to finish out this row, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, I have this row complete. As you can see, mine is still bowing in just a little bit, but once you do, there's a row of single crochet that goes in the top of this. It helps straighten that out a bit, and of course, if you want to, you can wet and block things to help with those things. But if I hadn't have pulled up the extra yarn as I was showing before, this would be much like this, because when I did my first row of crisscross stitches, basic crisscross stitches, I had my yarn too tight, and that's what it was doing. But just pulling up that yarn just a little bit more when you pull up that first loop will help relax everything and give you more room, and it doesn't affect the look of your stitches. It makes them lay better, in my opinion. I will say in my opinion. Some people may not feel that way. But this is what one row of dropped crisscross stitches looks like. This row does continue on, and we do crisscross. You do a single crochet across this way, and then you come back and do drop crisscross again, and you would again be going around this stitch that's on top. As you'll notice, the stitch on top and the crisscross below goes this way, and the stitch on top in this row goes this way. So you get slightly different look as you go further up because of the direction of the top stitch. In the regular crisscross stitch, you put the second stitch behind the first stitch, so that's what makes it a little bit different than the dropped crisscross also. All right, that is the end of my first stitch tutorial. Well, that's technically not true. There are other stitch tutorials I have here on the channel. I will link those below as well. And I would plan on doing at least one of these a week. So I hope that y'all enjoy, and I will see y'all in the next video. And y'all have a life lived creatively.